right, thanks. 7 o'clock, we'll call this meeting of the Yellow Springs Board of Zoning Appeals into session. We have an agenda in front of us. Judy, you want to call the roll, please?
I do. Reed.
Here.
Palata.
Here.
Salmonson.
Here.
Osterholm.
Here.
Zoff.
Here.
Also present is Denise Swinger, Planning and Zoning Administrator, and Ben Mazer is here representing Coolidge Wall.
Thank you. We have an agenda, we have a new agenda in front of us. We switched the hearings because I'm going to recuse myself from the second one. I'll go home and have dinner while you guys labor away. Unless there's any objections to this agenda or any additions.
We're good.
Okay. We have communications regarding the Orton Road variants that are included in the packet. Then we also have an additional one here from the Diebold's. And then we have a communication from the neighbor on not High Street, but South College for the Styles Ramey application. We also have minutes to review. They're in the packet. Has anyone had a chance to read these?
Oh, yeah.
Anyone have any modifications or any changes,
Just one,
additions?
I have one under the call to order. It was strike Ellis Jacobs and put in Dino's name.
Okay.
Thank you. No, Ellis Jacobs and Richard Zoff were required to recuse. They were not present. So that's why their names are there. Is that what you're referring to?
No, if you look at the very
call to
first one,
order.
the person who called the meeting to order, you have
Oh.
Ellis.
Fine, no?
Yeah,
Thank you.
yep.
Anyone else have anything? It's a rather extensive
It was.
minutes. If there's no,
I make a
Further
motion,
changes?
I make a motion to accept the minutes of the meeting.
is there a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All the not vote, since I wasn't there.
Likewise.
Likewise for Richard. The second meeting minutes we have is for our art room retreat last Thursday. These are very extensive, so any,
No changes.
anyone have any changes?
Make a motion to pass.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Next item on the agenda is the public hearing for the variance from the,
It's a setback.
of the setback
West South College.
for West South College. Thank you, Denise. We will do this is we will hear from the village planner, we'll hear from the applicant, have questions. To those folks, then we'll open a public hearing, let anyone else do their thing. Then we'll close that and have our discussions here amongst ourselves, and then go through the Duncan standards as we now know them.
Yes. Indeed.
By item, and that's how we'll run this. So Denise, if you want to start, please.
Sure. Susan Stiles and Alan Rainey purchased 2 lots at the corner of West South College Street and South High Street. They did a replat of that, combining the 2 lots into one. When you purchase, when you have a property that's located on a corner lot, you basically have 2 front yards. So in this instance, what the code says is when there are 2 front yard lot lines, the shorter of the 2 lot lines becomes the front yard, and then the opposite of that front yard lot line becomes the backyard. So the applicants chose to position their home facing West-South College Street, and there's nothing in the code preventing that. You can put the house either way. But the backyard lot line is actually the lot line that is next to the house on West-South College that is under construction to the west. They have requested a variance for that. It is, in residential B, it requires a 20-foot setback. And so they're requesting a 10-foot variance. Staff didn't see that as an issue. At the time when the report was written, we didn't have any communications from neighbors. I have had one that came in today and reviewed it, and she didn't have any issues with it. And she lived directly across the street on West-South College. But we do have a letter in the packet now for the homeowners that are immediately west, and that came in on Monday. So that's what you're deliberating. Like I said, staff's recommendation was to approve it. I mean, if there would have been a house on the other side, if this would not have been a corner lot, it's highly likely that would have been considered a side yard, and it could have had as close to a 5-foot.
What's the side yard setback in residential B?
It's 15 feet total, 5 feet minimum. So if you have 5 feet, you have to have 10 on the other. You can have 7 and whatever. You just have to go no less than 5 feet, and at least 15 total, and that's your minimum.
Okay. You folks have anything you want to add?
I'm Susan Stiles. I don't have a lot to add other than the reasoning for the placement of the house, which we have in the packet, is because there are a number of trees, which are why we bought these 2 lots and combined them, because we thought it was really beautiful. And our architect looked at it and wanted to save the trees. So I think we put in the packet that we had the trees surveyed, so we have ribbons around the trees that we hope to save. And when we had the surveyors survey the lots to combine them, that surveyor then plotted them on a survey so that then our architect could look at it and try to figure out how to place the house so we could save most of the trees. We originally had it 5 feet, and then we moved it 10 feet, and we think that we can still save most of the trees. But they're trees that are in that neighborhood. I think many people love and admire them. People have been saying that to me for quite a while when they found out that we bought the lots, and make comments. And that's really all I have to say, unless you have any questions.
Those
Thank
big
you.
giant bushes going to come down?
I think some of them will. The landscape architect would like to save them. I'm not wild about them, so we're going to sort of wait and see.
Were you aware of the zoning restrictions when you bought the
No,
property?
no, I was not, and I should have paid more attention, and I sort of assumed that the architect would. The way we actually found out about it, because the architect had it, 5 feet, is our builder went out, and I think that he contacted Denise, and he had the information, and he plotted it, and then he contacted us and said, you better get out here and look, because there are trees in the middle of your house. And we went out and we thought, oh, no, and so we didn't know what to do. And actually, John Cannon, who's here, suggested to us that we ask for a variance and see if we could to keep some of the trees.
You had communications with the neighbors to the west of you.
We have.
And it was at 5 feet that you asked them at when you guys were?
We
first
asked
talking?
them for 5 feet, and they really thought about it a lot. My husband, Alan, is the one who initially contacted them, but then we talked with both of them. And at the time, they weren't happy with that, but they told us that they would not dispute it. And when we heard, and so then Alan and I talked about it. We asked the architect, can we move it 10 feet? And would that be better? And so we moved it 10 feet. It looks like, I think most of the trees will survive. But I think the neighbors, still, if they had their choice between 20 feet and 10 feet, they might choose the 20 feet. Now, their house is 5 feet from the property line. They have a narrow lot, and theirs is 5 feet from it.
When you guys decided to move it 10 feet to go, to make the adjustment, did you notify them that you were going to do that?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Yes, we did. Okay, thank you.
Any more questions for her?
So what's the do you know the distance between the two houses? The shortest distance?
Well, their house is 5 feet from the property line.
Okay, so there's 5 feet.
And when I look at it, and maybe Alan can help me with this, our garage is what is going to be actually next to the property line. And so we're asking to have it 10 feet, so that it would be a distance of 15 feet between the houses. But our garage, it looks like it will be more by their driveway, but I think the back part may be next to their house.
Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
thanks, Susan. Any more questions for Denise? And if not, we'll open the public hearing. Okay, we'll open the public hearing. If anyone here has anything to say, please come to the podium, introduce yourself. Try to keep your comments to a couple minutes if possible.
Matt, we want to swear people in?
No,
No, okay.
we don't swear people into it.
We can.
We don't need to.
I just checking.
Anyone?
Well, my name is John Cannon. I own the property directly south of the one they're talking about, and I have two houses across High Street from the lot they're talking about, so I thought I was sort of relevant. I would like to see those trees preserved, and I hope you will allow the variance to preserve as many trees as possible. As I look at the house, it looks like it has its carport over on the east side there, and it shouldn't be too interfering with it. They have their views in other directions, so it doesn't look interfering. I walk around there a lot with my dog. So I would just like to...
So you're saying the means the house is, carport is on that side?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't really know the name, but I guess,
Mains.
yeah, so it's carport to carport. And it looks fine. I mean, it looks fine down them close. And I was sorry to hear it's even 10 feet, but that's up to you all.
All right, thanks. Yes,
I got a quick question. I'm looking at the map and it says vacated alley.
Can you?
introduce yourself, please.
Oh, sorry, Alan Brunsman. And it's 10 feet wide and it's between those two properties. I wonder what's
Yeah, I
that
was gonna
mean?
ask that question too. That's a old alley that
Yeah.
has not been vacated?
No, it was vacated,
Oh, it
and
was,
then
okay.
each property owner got 7.5 feet. Yeah.
So is that, where did that go? I mean, we got 10 feet here and 5 feet here. Where's the 7.5 in all this?
It's got lumped into their property.
It's lumped, yeah, it's
Is
lumped,
that part of the 5 feet?
No.
So
that's
It's
part
on
of
the
the,
property line split between the two.
Property line is
understand that.
down the middle of the alley, and the setbacks are from the middle of the alley.
Okay, so they got the 7.5 feet.
No, the alley is, the
I
alley,
understand.
Everybody got it already.
yes.
Okay. So it's free land they got.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's free. Nothing's free.
Well, I mean, if you look at the village maps, there's all these old alleys, right?
Vacant alleys everywhere.
And some of them are used and some of them have never been used.
Well,
I
yeah,
used to
these
run
are,
as a kid.
this is a vacated alley,
So
so
I
it's,
get around town.
Well, the
Has
point
the
was, if
entire
there was
thing
already
been-
10 feet or something, 15 feet or something, why are we?
Right.
that's not the case, right.
Good point,
I
though.
had the same question, actually. Has the entire alley been vacated, Denise?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so even though it shows up on the property map,
Do you want to know why it's on the property maps?
It actually, if you really look at it, it's not showing well up there, but see, they haven't replatted anything yet.
Okay.
We've gone ahead and vacated the alley. The difference with,
so it is noted there as vacated, right?
yes, and when Susan and Alan replatted, then they incorporated that into that vacated part. The people to the west haven't, because they haven't done any type of survey where they've changed that
Yeah, okay.
and incorporated that alley portion in there, but it is still theirs.
Okay. All right, thanks. Any other, anyone want to say anything during the public hearing? If not, we will close the public hearing. And then, really, then it's back up to us to have this conversation. We'll use these 8 standards that we learned about the other day. And let's go through, and in the past, we had a roll call on every one, and I think that works pretty well. So let's start off with the first one, and that is whether the property in question will yield a reasonable return, or whether there can be any beneficial use of the property without the variance.
Certainly can.
Right, and I agree with you, Richard. And I would add that, especially if you cut the trees, which is what they're trying to avoid. Right.
Right.
Anything else on number 1? Okay, if not, then let's,
Go
Call
ahead
the
and roll
roll.
call, all right. Palata,
Yes.
Salmonson,
Yes,
Osterholm,
yes.
Zoff,
Yes.
Reed,
Yes.
okay.
Second, whether the variance is substantial.
It's substantial to save the trees, and that's the goal, isn't it, I think?
This one, if you look at it and say you're cutting the rear yard setback in half, that seems like substantial. And on the other hand, if you talk about 10 feet versus, in terms of distance from neighboring property, it doesn't seem substantial.
Yeah.
Because it's typical with many lots all around town.
Well, when I was looking at this, I was thinking if you just change the street frontage to South College, then it wouldn't even be required.
Right. Well,
So that made me think it was not substantial.
maybe now's the time for me to say this. In the past, if I remember correctly, in Yellow Springs and in other zoning codes I've worked with, on corner lots, you actually had the choice of picking which was going to be the side yard and which was going to be the rear yard. There wasn't the specification that the shortest front yard determined the rear yard.
Right.
So, I don't know what the intent of the code is in specifying that, but when I think about how the adjoining properties, if they had typical houses on them, the rear yard would only be a little corner of this property that matched up with the rear yards of the adjacent properties. It wouldn't be something that ran all the way out to the street. Nobody has a rear yard next door to them, generally speaking. And in that respect, and this will have a generous, quote, rear yard to the south. So the concept, we're not allowing an unusual coverage of the lot. We're just doing this, the rear yard is going to butt up to, essentially to the lot to the south instead of to the lot to the west. In that respect, I don't see a substantial change it's one more perspective than anything else.
Anything else? We ought to wait
Ready?
on him.
Yes. Salmonson,
Is it substantial? No.
Osterholm?
He stepped out.
He stepped
Oh,
out.
I'm sorry, missed him. Okay, I'm not seeing that. Palata,
No.
Zoff,
No.
Reed,
No. Okay, number 3. Whether the essential character of the neighborhood would be substantially altered or whether adjoining properties would suffer a substantial detriment as a result of the variance.
I will weigh in again, and sort of the same argument that I just made applies here. If the neighborhood is, if you have a house on a corner, you have a house on a corner.
Yeah. Well, in some ways, I would say it's almost the opposite. If they were to cut the trees, that would be more of an alteration to the neighborhood
But-
than
Absolutely.
granting the variance.
Yep.
It sounds like they're building a very beautiful house, and it will add to the neighborhood.
Amen.
okay.
Anything else? Judy?
Just a question, would it be out of order to go back and get Scott's vote on the second
Oh, yeah, actually.
variance?
Scott, do
Is
you,
that is that
we-
okay?
I feel the
We blew
variance is
right by you.
substantial.
was that a no, Scott?
So with regard to whether the variance is substantial,
Number 2.
Yeah, under substantial. I'm trying to understand it properly, because I like the idea of the variance of the preserving of the trees. So is that the substantial part? Would that be a yes?
Whatever you think.
Well, so that would
No,
be,
that would be no.
You
then.
just-
Okay, no, I'm just like I said, I'm trying to figure out how they're using substantial in this
It's
sentence.
up to you.
Oh, then no. I like the idea of the preservation of the trees.
And that's what we
Okay.
all said.
Yeah, because I live in the neighborhood.
Yeah, we can
you're
tell you
setting
that
up for failure there, Scott.
And that's an eyesore. I mean, if you look at it, there's just an old rotted building halfway down those woods.
Well,
If
yeah.
you drive down the
Right, the
street.
old
That's-
greenhouses.
Yeah,
sort of-
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's definitely making it look better.
Okay.
Okay, so now we're to number 3.
okay? And you're ready to go on that one, okay. So, Palata,
No.
Osterholm,
No.
Salmonson,
No.
Zoff,
No.
Reed,
No. All right, number 4, whether the variance would adversely affect the delivery of governmental services such as water distribution, sanitary sewer collection, electrical distribution, stormwater collection, or refuse collection. Have we heard from anybody, Denise?
As I mentioned, we had one person that came in today.
It-
Oh, you
but
mean
any
from
No,
village-
from the
village?
Police
government.
and fire, yeah, go
No,
on.
no.
Okay,
No, it would still meet our side yard setbacks if it was a side yard. So, you're not asking for, that still would allow for fire services to be able to reach.
any further discussion needed on this?
No.
all right? Zoff,
No.
Osterholm,
No.
Salmonson,
No.
Palata,
Nope.
Reed,
No.
Good training. Do you all agree?
Number 5, whether the property owner purchased the property with knowledge of the zoning restrictions. Susan indicated that they were not aware of the restriction. Is that correct? Although Susan being on planning commission, I mean, come on.
I wasn't on planning at that point.
Any discussion on this item?
She admitted, no, it doesn't.
From staff perspective, I know that we had conversations, they did come in and meet with me. It's one of those weird things, I'm sure that I probably had talked about it, but it's not something that's gonna click in your head that, oh, this is a corner lot. And when we talked, this was a long time before they actually got to the point where they were making plans. I could see how one would easily forget that little, rule, because you have 2 front yard lot lines. And even Susan had indicated that the architect, meaning reviewing it, he didn't catch it either, so. And that typically, they're the ones that would review the zoning code.
Right.
No more discussion.
Okay. Salmonson?
Was it where the property purchase? No.
Okay. Zoff?
Yes.
Osterholm?
No.
Palata?
Nope.
Reed?
No.
Questions?
Number 6, whether the property owner's predicament feasibly can be obviated through some method other than the variance. And again, this one's easy.
Yep.
Yeah.
Cut the trees.
Cut the trees, right?
Or move
That's
the
how-
house.
You could build a different house.
Yeah.
You could build a different house too. Or not build at all.
I think we're good.
Ready?
Yes.
Okay. Salmonson?
Yes.
Osterholm?
Yes.
Palata?
Yes.
Zoff?
Yes.
Reed?
Yes.
Okay.
Number 7, whether the existing conditions from which a variance is being sought were self-created.
I don't think they planted the trees.
Yep.
True. Again, I mean, it's house size and that's where they chose, but you're right, Richard, I mean, obviously. Any further discussion?
You ready?
Yes.
Okay. Palata?
Yes.
Osterholm?
Yes.
Salmonson?
Yes.
Zoff?
Yes.
Reed?
Yes. Number 8, whether the spirit and intent behind the zoning requirement would be observed and substantial justice done by granting the variance. The catch-all.
Yeah. I would go on to the training.
No, I'll say, I'm not sure what the spirit and intent behind the zoning requirement is,
Says it's subjective. It's whatever you think it is.
but so, but other than that, I can go ahead.
And I would say that just the fact of rotating the street frontage makes this issue go away, would suggest to me that
Not a big issue.
it should not be a big issue.
Yep. Agreed.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Good.
Okay. Salmonson?
The spirit, by granting variance. Yes.
Okay. Zoff?
Yes.
Osterholm?
Yes.
Palata?
Yep.
Reed?
Yes.
All right.
Okay, do you want to review those with us and our vote tally and what we said?
Well, you all voted yes on the first question, whether the property in question would yield a reasonable return without the variance. You all voted no to whether the variance was substantial. You all voted no as to whether the essential character of the neighborhood would be substantially altered, or whether the adjoining properties would suffer substantial detriment as a result of the variance. Similarly, you all voted no on question 4 regarding governmental services, that there would be no adverse effect there. To question 5, did the property owner purchase the property with knowledge of the zoning restriction? Only Richard voted yes on that question. With regard to 6, you all voted yes as to whether the property owner's predicament could be fixed without that variance. You all voted yes to whether the existing conditions from which a variance were being sought were self-created. And you all voted yes to the fact that the spirit and the intent of the zoning code would be observed if you agreed with the variance.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So now it's, I guess, back to us. Any further discussion that we want to have on this?
Yes, I think we should at least pay due regard to the letter, since Ms. Mann didn't show up, make sure everybody read it and at least consider it. We have, it seems like I think they have a small point, but it was based on they didn't do it, and why are you letting these people, which it doesn't register in my mind, but I just think if anybody has any opinions that we owe it to them to talk about, Yeah, and I see their point, but I think it's outweighed by the factors we considered, but I think everybody should read the letter and at least come to their opinion.
I think in regards to that too, the only thing I would say, I think what John Cannon said, if they're both garage to garage,
Yeah.
that's gonna definitely give us a little bit more flexibility. Would we agree? I mean, if it's garage to garage, I think we're,
In terms of privacy.
right, that we're not really getting infringing on each other's.
But what I hear the neighbors saying is that, now I'm putting words into someone's mouth. We didn't consider a variance, we worked with what we had, because that's what we thought we had to do.
Yeah, and that's, really doesn't pertain
that-
to this situation.
No, but you can see why, you could say, well, no, I think the neighbors should have to,
Do the
to
same.
do the same thing that we had to do. And perhaps, what we're basically doing is saying the location of trees on the lot makes one lot different from another.
And it's a corner lot, so you've got two front yards, it makes it different than, I mean, that in and of itself is, it's a different property, just because it's two front yards.
Well, one thing in our retreat that we had, we talked about whether the property is different that allows or creates a detriment to its full use. Like, I think the example was, do you have a creek running through the middle of your lot?
Yeah.
Is this grove of trees the same
Yeah.
thing as a creek that,
To some extent, I think so.
that allows you?
It's, what we have to be careful of is how many trees, how big of a tree. If someone comes in and says, I just want to put my house here, and I'd have to cut down some trees to do it, and you look and say, well, these are just, these trees have only been here 10 years. That's not an excuse, but how big does the tree have to be? How long does it have
Right.
to be there to justify making a variance? Because that's the
And the only-
issue that we're dealing with.
Well, and you know that Mr. Cannon's view is gonna change if they cut the trees down. Because, I mean, that'll alter what he,
Unfortunately, anybody can cut their trees down anytime they want.
right.
I mean, maybe not unfortunately, but in fact, they could all be dead tomorrow because a new disease comes along.
I think the only thing else too that Matt brought up is if they chose to make the front yard on West Center College, just change them around, we don't have a problem, right?
Right.
If we go this way.
We're not even here.
Right,
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's basically why I'm
Yep.
comfortable with this.
exactly.
yeah.
It doesn't actually, the trees don't have to be the issue.
Right.
The issue is, where do you choose to put the rear yard and the side yard?
Yes.
And that's because our code is stringent enough that it has that
Right.
definition.
No, and, yeah. But I would move that we approve this variance.
I second.
Well, okay, let's,
Do we want to keep
hang on here,
discussing?
are we done discussing? We good? Okay. Judy, you wanna, sorry, we need to have a motion, don't we?
Yeah.
Sorry.
Send it to
All
Bill.
right, go ahead, Richard.
I move that we accept, that we approve the variance as stated.
I second it.
I second it.
You wanna do a roll call, please? You guys speak.
Palata,
Yes.
Salmonson,
Yes,
Osterholm,
Yes.
Zoff,
Yes.
Reed.
Yes,
Oh, thank you.
thank
You
you.
did great.
that training helped. That training.
You're up.
You're out.
Did you want to say why you excusing? Did you don't want to say why? I don't know if people are gonna, there's a lot of people here probably wonder, they wonder. I don't know. Okay.
See ya.
Hey, you take care. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Matt.
Why you make it easy for yourself?
My son does a bunch of solar stuff.
Oh, I just wondered, thank you.
Tapping the corners of your mouth with your napkin, think of me.
He's rolling.
He's going home to eat. Okay.
This one's easy.
Yep. All right, we're gonna call we're gonna put the next public hearing is on the variance by Nancy Schwab. And with regards to solar panels and placement of them. Who
Who's speaking?
Who would like to speak? State your name and,
Yeah, you want me to?
Can we?
oh, wait,
do a
I'm sorry,
separate-
I'm sorry. Before I do that, Denise, why don't you go over what's
Okay,
going on?
all right, that's okay.
My mistake.
Okay. Brett Henderson of Yellow Spring Solar submitted an application on behalf of Nancy Schwab, the homeowner, who is present. Yes. And this is for a ground-mounted solar array, which is also going to function as a carport. This would be on their property, but one of the reasons the reason they're here is because they wanted to have the height of the solar array extend beyond the 12-foot height requirement. So staff has reviewed this. One of the concerns was to make sure that, which was actually brought up in the application process, that there might be an issue with tree trimming around power lines, and staff did review that with Public Works Director, who agreed it shouldn't cause an issue, that the height of that should not cause an issue with tree trimming around power lines. This is also a pretty large property, 3.81 acres. Staff doesn't see any issue with this height variance.
What is the height, what are they going to, from 12 to?
Was it 15? A little over 15?
Yeah, it's 15 feet.
So
15.
3 feet variance.
3 feet and
Okay.
4 3/16 inch. 3 feet 5 inches.
Well, we're not doing math again tonight.
Give or take
Fantastic.
30 seconds.
I'd like to, Brett, why don't you come up? You want to give us a little,
I had to print out 4 copies because that was the number that was here last time, if you
Well,
guys want to share.
that's all you need.
I just wanted to show some examples of some of our recent construction, just so you guys are aware of the quality. The first one's there's a pergola that's gonna have panels on it, it's not finished yet, but,
Is this the one that's going on the property, or is this an example?
these are just examples,
okay.
if you can just kind of
Okay.
look through them, give you an idea. Some of them are a little more indicative of others. Like that second page has a roof. She's not gonna have a roof under hers. It'll just be visible with the panels. There's one example where you can see just the panels from the underside.
Okay, that's good.
There's a number of different custom structures there. But yeah, we started developing this project with Nancy back in August of 2019. We originally looked at a location. I don't know if you can bring like the satellite view up just of the overhead. I can show you. We were looking in her open pasture area, and that would have required the removal of about four large mature trees, oak, maple, in her pasture to keep it out of shade. And as we got through the development, we just kind of started to identify other options. And this area where we're looking is actually right where we wouldn't have to cut any trees. And we're elevating it in a way so that it's not going to be shaded by the house to the south. And also, the higher we get up, it doesn't get any shade from the surrounding trees. And it also allows her to use that space underneath it. So. A lot of different reasons. Also, just the pitch of it is set at as aggressive. I mean, ideally we'd want to be 30 degrees. We're only at about 20 degrees. But for the solar production, 30 degrees is optimal. So 30 degrees will make it even higher. But we've got it starting at about 6 feet head clearance and then goes up to about 13.5 feet head clearance. And that 13.5 was actually requested by Nancy's son, so that the utility trucks could get underneath there and trim the trees, because there's a drive that goes behind that structure where they've apparently do access that. So he was actually requested the height so that they would be able to drive under.
can you show me where, I'm just going to have up there where exactly where you're talking with the panel.
So the panels would be in this area
Got
here.
it, perfect.
It's like a little wraparound.
Yep.
circular ground.
That's over here.
And it already has been building, approved, structurally engineered, permits have been issued by Greene County. It was a slip, and my project manager somehow missed the zoning application before we got the building permit. And she's also paid for this back in 2019 as well, just as a side note. So she has a lot invested in it.
Any other questions for Brett?
Is it visible from the road?
From where?
Is it visible from the road, people driving
No,
by? Okay.
no. And I met with I've actually met with 3 of her adjacent neighbors to the north, and the 2 on the west and east wrote letters of support, Mr. Volker, Mr. Diebold. And then I met with the one in the middle and kind of went over what we were planning, and he was much more comfortable with it after I met with him. But just to give you an idea, we were originally looking at that open area in the pasture, and we would have had to cut those big 4 tall mature trees down, which I thought would have been unfortunate, because then it just would have been a ground mount structure out in the middle of the pasture with really no other functionality, and it would have been more costly, and
No point.
yeah,
Right.
so. What's that?
Oh.
Less sun as well, so. We like to do as optimal as possible to get the most sun, best bang for the buck. So, any questions?
No
Any
more
other
questions? No, sir.
Thank you.
I did my homework. I went out there and looked at it, so.
Want to open the public hearing? Anyone would like to speak?
Might as well. Yeah, I own the property, which is.
Can identify yourself?
Oh, I'll do it again. Hello, people. I'm Alan Brunsman. I own the property at 300, and 2 properties, actually. One's the driveway. It's that straight line on the east side of her property, east side, west side of her property, and the house that's directly south. I don't know whether you can, want me to point?
Please.
I own this and that, and actually that. I don't have any problem at all. I think it's a great idea. The only thing is that is the driveway, and I just have any questions, I might ask them for, is there any extra traffic that would be on that roadway due to that, since that's a private driveway?
Oh, well, we'll have.
I'm sorry, you have to address your question to the chair, and the chair can ask the question if they need.
Well, I addressed my question to the chair. He was answering. I didn't.
Okay, well,
And he was-
he'll follow up.
We have to follow procedures here.
He'll follow up and make sure that the
We'll
question's
follow it
asked.
up.
So the question is there going to be more traffic on the driveway?
Is there anything that will impact my property other than the driveway, as such, the driveway?
After it's built?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, during the building.
During the building?
I'd rather not have semis running down there.
Okay.
I just put 30,000 in the driveway. So.
Do you want me to answer that question?
Would you please answer that question with regards to that? It's procedures. That's how we have to follow the procedures here to keep it all smooth. Thank
There
you.
will probably be, there will be 2 deliveries. One will be for the solar materials, one will be for the lumber to build the structure. The solar materials come on a box truck, not like a full-length semi. It's about a 20-foot bed, and then they'll unload the panels.
What's the weight restriction?
The weight restriction on the truck?
Yeah.
So we're going to ask you again, if you're going to come up and ask a question, ask the question to me so that we can turn and ask it to the proper.
I mean, I don't know I'm not, I guess, an expert on trucks, but I just know that, they're gonna deliver maybe
How many deliveries are there going to
10,000 pounds of material.
be? And how many deliveries are there going to be, would you think? optimal?
2 deliveries.
Okay.
There'll be 2 trucks, one with the solar materials, and that weight would be, like, there's a pallet of panels weighs about 1,000, 1,200 pounds. There'll be 2 pallets, so at most it's like 3,000 pounds of materials for the solar, and then a separate delivery would be the lumber and 6x6s and 2x10s, 2x12s. We're probably looking at about 5,000 pounds of lumber on that load.
So then after those 2 deliveries,
That's
you're
it, and then
complete
there would be just a building inspector come in, electrical inspector come in to get, most of the time they inspect, together. There'll be a trench inspection. So there'd just be 2 different sets of inspections. Then my crew would be there for about a week. We've been, so once we get started, we'll be in and out in about a week. And we would just have 2 cars coming probably per day for a week.
Okay.
I've got your weight on your truck. If it's a 24-foot box truck, it's gonna be anywhere, it's 18,000 to 25,000 pounds. If it's a 26-foot box truck is 20,000 to 26,000 pounds. So,
And I'd be willing to offer if.
and I doubt it's gonna be, loaded
driveway,
to the
we
max.
repair it.
It's not gonna be maxed out, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I'd also like to mention that the variance isn't what's allowing the trucks to come in. The solar array could be built within the zoning standards, and we would have nothing to say about the trucks. But if there were a critical issue, the trucks conceivably could unload at Orton and do short, smaller trucks bringing the material back in more trips.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Any other questions from anyone?
I have one.
Well, let me open up for,
Oh, sorry.
for open.
Procedure.
Can we'll close the hearing, open here, and we'll turn it over to discussions for us.
I have a question for you. Have you got UPS delivery or FedEx delivery at your house? And they drive their truck in there?
Good question.
I'm Nancy Schwab.
Do they drive into your driveway to deliver to you?
They have, they're not doing it lately because
Okay,
we have
well, I'm
an
just wondering.
overhang branch that they're not going to negotiate.
well,
So
that would cause it
they've
to-
been out for the last few months.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm just
but they
trying to
could,
get the
yeah.
idea of the weight, because the box trucks are about your same kind of weight with them too. So I would think you're fine if the UPS and FedEx is not tearing it up. These trucks should not tear it up.
I have, so you own the driveway? Yeah. And she uses it? Yeah. Do you have an agreement?
Yes.
Okay, does this fall within the,
on the driveway.
does this fall in the agreement, or really, it wasn't that specific?
Sorry.
I just wondered, it sounds
So
like,
the easement on the driveway provides access to the house.
okay.
That's all.
Oh, that's all it says? Makes
Well,
sense. Yeah.
it was drawn up by a lawyer and it's pretty long, but that's the basics of it, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I drove by it about 4 times till I figured out it's down that driveway. But where's 310?
I have no further questions. I'm ready for the question.
Okay, well, at this point, let's do the Duncans. And we'll discuss each one and vote on each one and move forward. Question number 1, whether the property in question will yield a reasonable return or whether there can be any beneficial use of the property without the variance.
There already is.
Judy's gonna call roll.
Well,
We have to discuss, if you want to discuss it first.
yeah, is there anything you want to do?
Any discussion on this, on number 1?
No, I don't have any.
I don't have any.
Okay.
Richard?
No.
Okay, Salmonson?
Whether the property will, I read these twice because the way they're worded, whether the property will return without, yes.
Okay, Osterholm?
Yes.
18 for-
Zah?
Yes.
I know, right?
Hello?
Yes. Number 2, whether the variance is substantial. And we're talking 3 foot.
3 feet out in the
feet.
middle of,
Yeah.
no offense, the country somewhat. I don't think it's, and it can't be seen from the road is
Right.
what the answer was.
No, it can't be.
As verified by my colleague.
Richard?
No, I don't think it's substantial.
Okay, I'll go ahead and call the roll. Osterholm?
No.
Zah?
No.
Salmonson?
No,
Pilata?
No. Number 3, whether the essential character of the neighborhood would be substantially altered or whether adjoining properties would suffer a substantial detriment as a result of the variance.
And we've already heard
we've just-
from the majority of the
Yep.
neighbors
yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll call the roll on that. Zah?
that it would not be substantially altered, no.
Okay. Osterholm?
No.
Salmonson?
No,
Pilata?
Nope. Number 4, whether the variance would adversely affect the delivery of government services such as water distribution, sanitary, police, fire, etc. I think we fully discussed
there's
that.
a
that-
driveway for
That the
God's
village administration was
Okay
good with
with
that.
sake.
Yes,
The only thing she mentioned was a tree, but we don't get into that.
right.
Kill it.
Branch, I'm sorry, a branch.
Kill the
Can we
branch.
call the roll?
Okay. Osterholm?
No.
Zah?
No.
Salmonson?
No,
Pilata?
Nope. Number 5, whether the property owner purchased the property with knowledge of zoning restrictions. I'm sure she didn't have in mind that she was doing
Yeah,
a 3-foot variance here, so.
Yeah, I don't think she, well, we could ask her, but I don't know what difference that makes.
You mean call the roll?
Yep, Zoff?
I'm still thinking about this one.
Oh, okay.
By the property owner.
I'm sorry, I'm gonna pause here. When this property was purchased, there weren't solar panels to put up,
Correct.
all right? What we're talking about
about a variance.
is a variance for the purpose of solar panels.
Right.
Really, not just a variance to an accessory structure, even though solar panels fall under that category of accessory structures in general in our code. And our code hasn't come up to date dealing with solar.
This is actually to the accessory.
But you're talking about a 3-foot
Right.
variance of 3 feet, that's all we're
Yeah,
talking.
it's to the solar, it's not to the solar panels, it's to the.
No, we're talking about the
accessory
knowledge.
structure.
I'm not talking about the substance, whether the property owner had knowledge of the zoning restriction. And I'm saying, when they purchased the property, the zoning, no one perceived that there was
Right.
going to be a problem. All right, so I'm gonna say that the owner didn't have knowledge of the zoning restriction. No.
Okay.
Can we call the roll?
Yeah, that was his,
Yep.
it
Yeah.
took a while there, but that was his.
Didn't want to spit that out.
Osterholm,
No.
Salmonson,
No,
Palata.
Nope. Number 6, whether the property owner's predicament feasibly can be obviated through some other method other than a variance. Discussions?
it could be obviated, but not to any extent that would be beneficial for what she's doing. I mean, you could make that 10 feet, that would make the other side, my math is a
Too
good
low.
3 feet.
Yep.
It would cut down, and they've already adjusted it from the prime height, so I guess it could be obviated.
But
I
that's
hate
it.
that word,
But not to the extent that's gonna be helpful for them.
yeah.
Well, then, Mr. Anderson talked about the other location, which was, cut the trees down.
Yeah.
Right. Yes,
It-
right.
It's feasible, but not desirable.
That's perfect. Well said.
Are you ready?
We are ready.
All right, Salmonson,
Yes.
Osterholm,
Yes.
Zoff,
Yes.
Palata.
Yes. Number 7, whether the existing conditions from which a variance is being sought were self-created.
Questions I have.
Well, this is again like the one, you could say, oh, they built the house in the wrong place.
Right.
Okay, but they weren't building the house when they had any idea that they were going to put up solar panels. So I would say that they were not self-created. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm assuming the conditions we're talking about is building the panels high enough that the sun comes over the house and
Catch
it
the
doesn't
sun.
interfere with traffic and trees. And none of those were self-created.
Have we started the roll?
No.
No,
No.
you have not.
It's not like the last time.
Okay, I'm just checking.
Whether it is from its-
They all kept looking at me like,
Yeah,
what?
I'm gonna say yes.
Yeah, I
Are you
already,
ready?
Let's call the
Okay.
roll.
it's man-made, so,
Osterholm,
yes.
Zoff,
No.
Salmonson,
Yes.
Palata.
Yes. And number 8, whether the spirit and intent behind the zoning requirement would be observed and substantial justice done by granting the variance.
And again, I'll speak up. I don't know what the intent of the code is when we establish the heights for accessory structures. So that's difficult. Substantial justice to whom?
To the code, to the.
To the code.
To the code.
To the code.
No, not to the code. If you were doing substantial justice to the code, you would adhere to the code. So it is substantial justice.
To the variance.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Anything else? Are we good?
Ready?
Call the roll,
All right, Osterholm,
Yes.
Salmonson,
Yes.
Zoff,
Yeah.
Palotta.
Yes. Would we like to review, or would you like to review all 8? And so, or would we like to do the motion?
I don't think,
I think we're good.
Wait,
Does
I'll get a motion.
anyone want to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion, we approve the variance as requested.
I second that.
Okay. Osterholm,
Yes.
Zoff,
yeah.
Salmonson,
Yes.
Palotta.
Yes.
Chairman, may I say one other thing?
Yes.
I would like to comment in 2 ways. One, if you notice, the majority of the letters we received were identical. And there seems to be a significant, well, I don't know if this is significant, there's a noticeable number of people that think that the zoning code ought to be changed. That this isn't a unique situation, but that the erection of solar panels should be allowed to exceed the heights of other accessory structures. And so I would like the Board of Zoning Appeals to somehow communicate with the Planning Commission that this issue has come before us and that they may want to consider changing the code, because this situation is not going to only happen on one piece of property in town. We didn't say that we granted this variance because it was a large lot. We didn't say we granted it because, that it made it easier to drive a truck underneath. We said, many people said, no, we think that the people ought to be able to put their solar panels in the best position.
Yeah, but if I'm not against the zoning board or the planning commission looking at that, but if you just grant for solar panels, I'm gonna come to you and say, why can't I build the roof of my house 13 feet? So I think you have to set a standard and then give variances when needed, as opposed to saying, oh, you can build your solar panels, it's 13 feet. Well, I'm gonna come to the board and say, I wanna build my garage. You're just passing the buck
Well,
someplace else.
That does kind of answer yourself, because you can go higher than 12 feet by adjusting the roof style you use.
That's something we want to get into, Denise, for Planning Commission? Is that something we want to go down that road?
I would say, from a legal standpoint, my advice to you would be to have Planning Commission pursue that. And that's a robust discussion Planning Commission will probably have if that's brought before Planning Commission. But certainly, the BZA's purpose would not be to propose zoning code amendments. So it's a great discussion. That could be something that Planning Commission could take up if they wish to do so, or if somebody brought that to their attention. But that would be my suggestion for you tonight as far as this body goes. This is not really quite the forum to have that discussion.
Okay.
At least on a public, in a public setting, public record.
Nope, okay, I won't.
Okay.
So you,
That's okay.
Present that to the.
That's
so,
okay, we're good. You're good, you got everything is done. Your variance is good, we're,
Yeah.
so that's,
so you as a body can make
Yeah,
a
because we
request
can't.
to Denise. Pass that on to planning.
right. So our suggestion, Denise, would be just to look, to pass that on to Planning Commission,
Yeah, sure.
at a later discussion for them. we
Yeah,
can go from
and
there.
I did talk to a couple former planning commission members that were a part of the zoning process, and there was some reasons why they did that. I'm not gonna get into it here, but, let's just go on to agenda planning. Agenda planning, I just want to let you know, Yellow Springs Community Foundation did, we sent them a variance application today. They are you'll probably be joining us again here soon. They have an awning that was donated to them, and it is too wide for the code, so they're gonna be probably coming for a 2-foot, 2-inch variance at some point here soon, but they haven't turned their application back in yet.
Okay.
So just letting you know, heads up, you might be getting a call from Judy again to schedule another
She said
hearing.
twice a year.
I know,
I
right?
know, right?
Yeah, we done
I'm
shot
so
that up tonight,
sorry.
didn't we?
Right, we didn't even have one for a year.
This is
And then
only
all
one-
of a sudden, it's just been coming up, so.
That's good, though.
All right,
Make
so
it-
have you only had one so far this year? This is the
This
first.
is
Well,
two.
this year, but I mean,
Now,
that-
now
So
this
we
is-
can still
yeah,
hit the
that's true.
margins.
Okay.
Yeah, all right.
I make a motion, we adjourn the meeting.
I second that emotion.
A motion.
Everything.
All in
Motion,
favor?
emotion.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.